nistu pikani, nitaniko, itsimaki. And that's some of the plain sign language. I am Blackfeet, Pikani. My name is Stabs Down. Now that's traditional name that name was given to me. That was my great-great-grandfather's name. You know, I want to quickly preference, I always say this too, is let's remember in this conversation we talk about Native Americans that not all Native Americans are the same. There's over 500 federally recognized tribes and over 500 non-federally recognized tribes. They all have their own languages and traditional ways. So when we talk in generalities about Native Americans, we have to remember that they have more differences. But there are some things that we share. If you want to look at a shared world view with Indigenous people or Native Americans, it's about everything being related, everything being connected. The worldview, we mentioned that man was created last, so the animals, the environment was here before us. So actually most Native people or Indigenous people learn from the animals, learn from the environment. And so that's what we talk about, all our relations being related to all things. And when we talk about all things, we also mean things that may be considered inanimate, that yes, we receive messages in spiritual and mysterious ways from things like rock, things from the cosmos. And so we look at those origin stories of where our beliefs come from, that have our values embedded into that. So if we're connected to all things, we need to respect all things. When you take something from the earth, such as maybe a plant or a medicine, you always make an offering and give back so that that plant will continue. When you take berries, you always make an offering back to the spirits and that, so that things will continue, so that life cycle will continue. And when we were talking there with the horse continued to move about. And some of us will look disconcerted. Well, shouldn't the horse be just standing there? Shouldn't you be still and be talking and one thing we also, so that I want to remind people that part of this thing of being connected to in relationship to all things, that all things are living, all things are moving. And so we wanted to share a little bit with you today about our relationship with the animals and the plants and the horses, and we need to learn. You can see this animal, we need to learn from him. He's wanting to control things, and that's what we need to pay attention to. We aren't in control as humans, so we need to learn from him, find out what he wants. I would probably have to spend a few days with this horse to learn from him so he could speak to me and tell me what's going on with him. So there's the Indigenous people knew about this movement, and sometimes science doesn't catch up. They finally realized that oh, hey, there's atoms, there's electrons, there's neutrons. Now we're getting it down to many very small kinds of things that are in all of us. So there's that movement is in the cosmos, and we learn from the cosmos, and we learn from the animals and the plants and how that movement is. So it's interesting when we look at it from what may be a science way, that we have this thing called chaos theory, that string theory, that everything is connected. There is movement in all things. So we are all We are all related. There's a push and there's a pull, and so that's representative of the way the world works. It's a representative of that whole cosmological belief about the existence of things. But it also is part of ceremony. One of my elders told me that ceremony is a reenactment of the Genesis. So talking about everything being connected, and again the circle is a symbol of everything being connected. In 1984, I was honored by my tribe and given a war bonnet to wear as being the first Blackfeet president of our tribal college. And in our tribe and many tribes, something like a war bonnet, you just don't put it on. Kinds of things are earned. You have to go through a ritual, go through a rite of passage. So as elders recognize a person's deeds, so to speak, they can bring you into these traditional kinds of things. And they brought me into the medicine ceremonies. So in our tribe, as I was brought into what was called the Brave Dog Society or Crazy Dog Society, that is up a level from some of the other what we call societies or groups. It is akin to maybe getting a degree, say like it may be, and it isn't exactly this way, but just to help us understand a little bit, to do some comparisons of that. It may be like a bachelor's degree, and then as you move into the more sacred societies, it's more like a doctorate degree. So it's really a learning process. In fact, I'll just share this with you. My doctoral dissertation was learning in Blackfoot ceremony, because I wanted to work with, because I was learning ceremony myself, I was intrigued with the elders who could sing the songs and do hundreds of songs, 300, 400 songs, and rituals that are very exacting and that have to be done exactly the way they were done or given to us in those spiritual kinds of ways. So I would say what we call a medicine person, a spiritual person, to me is beyond a doctorate degree, if you will. For me, for example, in teaching Native American studies, I respect other tribes' ways. Now I know there are boundaries. There are things that a lot of people have called taboos and rights. That, for example, the war bonnet I talked about. You have to have the right to wear that. And so it's a taboo for most tribes to you don't just put that on. What I say then is I don't talk a lot about some things that may be more spiritual, that may be more religious, because some things may be inappropriate in a classroom. So as a Native professor that teaches Native American studies, knowing my own ways, I know what things I can bring into the classroom and what things belong in the context of a ceremony, belong in the context of a spiritual kind of thing. And sometimes that's a challenge for students, because we all are intrigued, we want to learn about other people's ways and that kind of thing, but there are boundaries. There are ethical boundaries. how does one deal with living in this society? And I think that is a challenge. And some people talk about living in two worlds, but I don't know, because I also had another elder who from the Sioux tribe say, and I learned a lot of things from this man, is that, well, it's not two worlds. It's only one world. It's the world we live in now. One of the things about ways of knowing is you're asking a question about how does one cope or live with these two kinds of different things. Well, one thing about the worldview of Native Americans is that it's not like the other society where there's an answer. Huh? It's about the lived experience of people. I guess I'm here to tell you, as a Native American professor, what we look at now, it's interesting, is that this has been labeled primitive knowledge. So when the Europeans came here, they considered this primitive, and we still have that derogatory term. But now, as we teach, I do teach a class called Indigenous Ways of Knowing. And as we examine this so-called primitive knowledge, we start to find out these things that were already known, that science has found through their methodology. So we have two different ways of looking at the world. One example I use with the students is that if you have a scientist and you have this traditional medicine person that I'm talking about, that I learned from, whereas the scientist will say, well, that spiritual knowledge, this thing about spirits and all of that, that's primitive, that's not real. Huh? But then the medicine person will look at what this person in science is saying, that actually comes from abstract concepts. Those are things that just somebody made up. That's not real. So you have two different realities here. So you have profound knowledge on both sides. I'm excited because now we can finally talk about our traditional ways and examine. And now a lot of many scientists and that are realizing there is some profound knowledge over here that we didn't pay attention to, that maybe we need to consider now.